Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Spin Sucks Fireside Chat. I am Gini Dietrich, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's guest. Christopher Penn and I became friends several years ago from being on the speaking circuit together and showing up at the same conferences. A lot of times I was in Boston for those conferences, so I got to see him there. For a million years, at least, I've been trying to get him to smile in photos with me. Maybe. Yeah, right? I can get a grin or two out of him today. I'm going to win this war. And as soon as I get a photo of it, I'm posting it everywhere online.
I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, it's going to happen. Most recently, we've become even better friends as I have joined the board of his new company, Brain Trust Insights, which we're going to talk about today. And I've been privileged to see a side of him that is rare and incredibly inspiring. He's hands down one of the smartest people on the face of this earth. And I always joke that I should follow him around and relate in English what he's saying, because he has this crazy way of making your head explode. And you're going to experience that in a few minutes in kind of a good way. And it's funny, I always explain it like this. He gets up on stage and he talks about predictive analytics and the things that you can do with data. And everybody goes, holy cow, I have no idea what he just said, but I know I need it. So I wish that we all had that ability. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Penn.
Welcome back. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, you're one of my favorites, obviously, but I do like to make everybody's heads explode. So let's make that happen today. So you and Katie Robert just opened a business together. Robert. Thank you. New married name. I didn't know if I had that right. Robert, thank you. You just opened Brain Trust Insights in March.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what you do, why someone would hire you, and how you're going to achieve global domination.
Ooh, that's a tall order. So what we do is help companies make more money with their data. A ton of companies are just sitting on so much good stuff. It's in the digital equivalent of like a desk drawer somewhere. And if companies only pulled it out of the drawer and actually did something with it, they could make more money with it. And so that's what we do. We do it in a few different ways. We help companies fix up their infrastructure. Everything from like, hey, you forgot to put goals in Google Analytics to like, okay, you should actually restructure your CRM like this or move to this system, things like that. We do a lot of predictive analytics, as you mentioned, time series based, which is to say, when is something likely to happen? Mm-hmm. We do driver analysis, which is what's the likely driver that causes this thing to happen that you care about. So silly example, if you were to feed your Twitter analytics to a driver analysis software and say, what creates retweets? It would tell you what combination of variables have a statistical relationship with that. And then you go and you do your A/B testing. And then we do a ton of what's called text mining or natural language processing. We just released a white paper taking 51,000 complaints from a credit reporting agency, one of those businesses nobody loves,
Right,
and scored all the complaints by how emotional they were, what kind of emotional valence they had. And one of the most interesting findings was that the more emotional the complaint, the more likely that the company eventually ended up having to pay money to settle the case, to settle the complaint. So if the company had only intercepted those complaints sooner, they could have saved themselves some money.
Wow.
So doing text mining, we're doing another project with a food and beverage company where we're digging through their customer call logs to say, hey, here's your customers are asking about this new category of food. You've never heard of it. Do you have a product offering or do you have a business offering for that? And we've come up with like half a dozen already. Like, hey, do you even know this is a thing? We're all Googling like, I've never heard of this food before. What is this thing?
Right.
And now they're able to take that and develop new product around it, or take their existing solutions and redeploy them for these new foods. So that's a lot of what we do. And then for the global domination part, I mean, artificial intelligence and machine learning are eating everything. AI produces three things, right? It produces acceleration, which means you get your results faster. It produces accuracy, which means you get better results. And it produces alleviation, which relieves you of the boring stuff that nobody loves to do. And so if we build solutions with 1, 2, or 3 of those components, at some point, then we will control all the machines, and the future has 2 jobs, right? It is either you manage the machines or the machines manage you. And so we want to be the ones managing the machines running the world.
So you had a conversation related to artificial intelligence and machine learning in the Spin Sucks community a week or so ago. And I thought it was interesting because the person who was asking the question is a web development firm. And she was saying, I know that AI and machine learning are going to replace me. I just don't know when. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's interesting. And I think the conversation you had with her was interesting too, in terms of, there are things that obviously robots, machines can't replace from a human perspective, but from a web development company, from a PR firm company, like there are a lot of things that machines can replace.
So I would be bold enough to say is not much that machines will eventually not be able to do, because, for those of you who have children under the age of 13, this would be the time to pause the podcast and put some headphones on. The fact that we have AI and now sex bots being built with AI in them so that you can have actual conversations with them means that the most intimate interaction that you can have as a human is potentially on the table for replacement by machines. If you can replace humans with that, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
I think everything else is up for grabs. Now let's talk about that, because let's do a 2x2 matrix, everybody's favorite, right? So pretend there's a 2x2 matrix in front of you. On the horizontal axis is the physicality of work. Is it physical work or non-physical work? And on the vertical axis is the cognitive load of the work. Is it highly repetitive or is it not repetitive? Mm-hmm. What is going to get replaced? Well, first of all, highly physical, highly repetitive has already been replaced. Manufacturing has robots that build everything, right? So that's up for grabs. Highly physical, non-repetitive is now in play. So we see this with things like farming robots that can do, they can see the shape of a vegetable and cut the lettuce at exactly the right angle, whereas previously it was not possible to do. The dexterity robots is getting better. Everyone has seen the videos with Atlas and Boston Dynamics, the robot that can run and jump and do somersaults. Again, if a robot can do that now, powered with AI, everything's up for grab in that category. You now also think about the physicality. We get to less physical work, like cognitive, like mailroom clerk, or accountant, or web designer, or developer, right? Highly repetitive, not very physical. There's actually an industry called robotic process automation, which is intended to replace the people in that sector. So all that's left then is non-physical, non-repetitive work, which is cognitive and creative. So this is stuff that's true creativity, which is still up for grabs in some ways, because as the machine's cognitive abilities to create something new improve, that becomes vulnerable as well. There was a story recently, last week, about a deep learning system that can take just a single still photo and extrapolate the world around it. So it can make a 360 sphere based on what it sees in just that photo, because it has a training library of a couple billion images that say, when there's a barn and a cow, it's probably farmland everywhere else. Right? So it's all probability. So every profession will eventually be up for grabs. But the more repetitive something is, the faster it's going to get replaced.
So what does a communicator do in that case then?
The area where people are still uncomfortable dealing with machines is in valuable relationships. So, for example, how many people listening love to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles? Right.
Everyone.
Right. Nobody likes to go visit the trolls, right? And I apologize if you work at the DMV, but your compatriots are probably not nice people.
That in the post office.
Exactly. And nobody likes talking to airline customer service, right? So all these things where there's a low bar of expectations for human service, a machine, by creating a mediocre experience, is automatically going to make a better customer experience. So a communicator has no chance. If you are a communicator and you're bad at it and you create an unpleasant experience, guess what? You are up for replacement because a machine can do it. It is only the communicators who are great at building relationships, at investing in relationships, and creating long-term relationships that are very human in nature, that are going to be the most resistant to automation. So, for example, say you are, the press secretary for a prominent government organization, and no one likes you.
You get kicked out of restaurants.
A machine could stand up on the stage and deliver exactly the same information, take questions, because Watson can now debate people, for example, and win. And it'll probably be an okay experience. And the bonus, you probably don't have to worry about Watson accidentally saying something racist while you're on stage. It'll just deliver cagey answers, as it should. On the other hand, if you are a beloved public personality, no one wants to see that replaced. No one would accept a Dwayne Johnson robot, right? They're like, oh, we want the real thing.
Yes. So from a PR firm perspective, because most of what you do is client service, it's not actually communications. A lot of that's not going to be replaced because it is valuable relationships and it is long-term relationships. And it's like all the stuff that we do, the tactical stuff, that will be replaced.
100%.
Yeah, which I look forward to. Please take that off my list. Thank you.
Yep. So when you think about it, that transforms the role of a communicator from copy-paste monkey, right, who's churning out releases and pitches, to essentially project manager, where you are managing the machines that do the work.
And does that applies too, I would imagine, across any agency, advertising, web development, social,
recruiting,
SEO,
staffing, accounting, every single agency,
every service.
The work becomes replaced by machines and you manage the machines. Again, two jobs in the future. Either the machines manage you or you manage the machines.
We want to manage the machines. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about predictive analytics, because this is one of the things that I think is extraordinarily compelling about what you do. And you made a joke a few weeks ago about cheese, and then you did an analysis around it to discover what certain kinds of cheese people will be talking about at certain times of the year. So talk about, I like that example just because I think it simplifies it for people. So talk about a little bit about that.
So one of the things that is a reliable source of data, particularly for communicators, is search data. When people search for something, there is an implicit intent. You don't generally search for, cheese shop near me for fun, right? You search with an intent. You don't search for PR firm near me. You don't search for best PR agency in Chicago unless there's a reason to do it, right? Instead, you'll go watch Netflix. So in that search intent, then, there's a reason for it. And because the search data is broadly available and in a clean format, you can then predict it. You can predict based on previous year's data when something is likely to happen in the future. And if you know that, then you can tune your marketing, your communications, everything to that. So the cheese example is a fun one. We took, I think, like 40 different kinds of cheeses. For anyone who's watched the Monty Python sketch Cheese Shop, I basically went down the list of every cheese that he asked for. Gouda, Edam, Stilton, and so on and so forth. And fed it into the search engines to extract the data, and then used a piece of software, this time series predictive analytics. The technical name is autoregressive integrated moving averages with seasonality, weighted more with recency, but you don't need to know that. And what it spits out is either a chart, a graph, or a table of when in the next 52 weeks any given cheese is going to be searched for the most. So we're recording this on June 25th. Right now, halloumi is on its way down and mozzarella is on its way up. Mozzarella becomes, the cheese through September. Now, it's a silly example, but suppose that you were representing a cheese consortium.
Yeah.
If you knew mozzarella is about to become the thing, you need to change your messaging. You immediately need to change your pitches. You need to change your advertising to reflect that. If you are a traditional PR person and you're doing long lead, like, hey, B2C, you need to start pitching the holiday guides in September in order to make it into the November, December holiday guides. Well, what cheeses will people care about when the holidays roll around? If you had this forecast, you would know what to pitch so that it would be on target. And ideally, the publication would be like, how did you know that that Edam, or no, smoked Gouda would be the thing in the week of November 25th when this issue dropped? Well, you use analytics for that. So predictive analytics gives you the ability to see, based on years and years of data, what's likely to happen, especially in a mature industry. But even then, when it's something that's not mature, you can still see ahead what's trending upwards versus what's sort of static. So one of the things that as communicators should know, influencer marketing is really interesting right now. It's something that a lot of people are very interested in. Based on our forecasting of the trends and the way the trends are accelerating, it's likely that people will be looking for influencers and influencer marketing related topics 80% more in 2019 than they are in 2018. And that is a shocking increase.
That's huge, yeah.
Exactly. So if you are, by the way, pro tip for anyone who's listening who runs an agency, if you don't have an influencer marketing program, now would be the time to start.
Yeah, right now. I think it's interesting because some of the stuff that I've seen you produce, you kind of go, oh, yeah, I mean, I knew that. And so you intellectually, you do know it, but you don't always apply it to the stuff that you're doing because maybe it's curse of knowledge where you know it, but you don't really apply it. So I think just having that data in front of you to go, yeah, this confirms exactly what we were thinking, and we should actually apply this to our efforts.
It goes back to that second A, the accuracy. Predicting the future is easy. Like, yeah, you know when Black Friday is. If you're a B2C marketer and you don't know when Black Friday is, you should just quit.
I feel like everybody should just quit if you don't know.
Pretty much. But the value is in the specificity. What exact week and how much should you increase your budget by, or how much should you change your staffing by? Like, hey, if you're in B2B and you know Labor Day is when everyone comes back to the office, cool, got that. How much of an increase is it? How much should you change your staffing to pitch that week, for example?
Right.
There's some value there. And then even in the things that you kind of know, you may not really know. So one of the predictions that we did was Outlook out of office. When do people search for that? They search for that when they're about to go on vacation. So logically, when that volume drops down, that means people are looking for the feature less, which means they're probably more likely to be in the office. Now, everyone talks about the summer slowdown. Oh, yeah, summer slowdown between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Nobody does any business. Well, when we ran our forecast, the summer slowdown begins the week of June 17th and ends the week of July 8th. Why? Why is it not the whole summer? We were discussing this morning in our staff meeting because fiscal years renew on July 1. And just like in January, the first 2 weeks, sales has this kickoff. And then sales comes to marketing and says, we need to double the leads. And marketing's like, crap, how do I double leads?
Right.
So the third week of July, people are trying to get in the game because they have a new fiscal year to contend with. And so for anybody that is in that enterprise or government or that fiscal year space, July 1 is effectively New Year's, and so they have to ramp their businesses up. So that's why the summer slowdown is not all summer long. Now, we knew that, but did we really know that? Or were we making the assumption that it's all summer long?
And you make the assumption as well that kids get out of school, like the Chicago Public Schools got out on the 19th, and you have the 4th of July next week. So you make the assumption that, between the 19th when kids are out of school here, all the way through the end of the 4th of July week, it's going to be slow. But you didn't realize, you don't really realize the correlation between, you make the assumption, but you don't realize the correlation between that and the fiscal year.
Exactly. So that's the value of predictive analytics. Like all forms of machine learning, acceleration, get to the answer faster. Alleviation, you don't have to sit there and decide your editorial calendar over and over and over.
Right.
And accuracy, you know better what's going to happen when.
So one of the things that you're extraordinarily good at that I think the normal human being cannot do is take data and take algorithms and actually make it work for you. And a great example of that is we had another conversation in the SpinSucks community about media monitoring, and everybody had the usual suspect recommendations, Cision and Trendkite and blah, 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 blah. But you came at it from a different angle, and you provided a link to Google queries to create your own monitoring. I'm fairly intelligent, so I opened it and I was playing around with it. And then I got to a point where I was like, I literally have no idea what to do now. So how can we use something like Google queries to get us the media monitoring that we need without having to spend a gazillion dollars on some of these media monitoring services that do just an average job?
With any decision buy or build, because what you're really talking about is building on Google is the database, right? Google BigQuery is one of two databases that every PR professional should be aware of, because it is the back end to Google News. If it's in Google News, it's in the BigQuery. It's in a project called GDelt. The second one is a service called Watson Discovery from IBM Watson, which gives you it's the last 60 days worth of news analyzed by Watson, sliced, diced, scored, sentiment, everything. And then you ask Watson questions. Both of these services are free of financial cost. So what you're doing is essentially building a system on top of them. Anytime you're doing buy versus build, it's a question of resources. What do you have more of? Do you have more of time, or do you have more of money? Brain Trust Insights is a startup. We have no money, and therefore we have plenty of time. So it makes total sense for us to build our media monitoring on essentially the free stuff, because we have the capability. And if you didn't have the capability, you would learn the capability because you have time rather than money. If you have money and you don't have time, buy PR tool of choice. They're all pretty much the same thing.
Well, they all use the Google API to support it, so it makes sense to build it on top of that. They say that they all have their special sauce, and the GDelt API is part of it, but some of them also have their own web scrapers. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that has built its own web scrapers years ago, and is about 60% accurate, but is not reliant on Google. So is that something that Brain Trust Insights does for clients? Would you build that for a client so that they could? No. Oh, okay.
Again, because it's one of those things, like, if you just want to buy something, to develop a full system on top of that is going to cost you more than a subscription to a regular service.
Got it. Okay. So we're talking about buy versus build and having more time versus money, which is a great segue into the fact that you read 1,500 blogs a week, but you have a secret to doing it. Will you tell us?
I have several.
Okay. You don't have to tell them all.
Well, it comes down to repetitive filtering. So I subscribe to a bunch of blogs, and I use Feedly as a service to do it. Now, what I will go through is I will tag them just with a little save for later mark. Like, I'm not going to read the post and go, it sounds interesting, tag for later, and just go through this, do a couple hundred a day. Pretty straightforward, takes 15 minutes at most, because you're just going through tagging things. On the back end, there is an if this then that plugin that takes the Feedly things and sends it to a service called Pocket, which is a great little fun service. Pocket has an API that lets you extract all the URLs out, and then that goes to my own software, which then extracts the number of social shares, the number of clicks through Bitly, the SEO data, in sentiment, emotion score, and what topics are in the text of that article, because it extracts the article text. And I care about articles about data and analytics, and AI, machine learning, and stuff like that. And so it scores them by the number of occurrences of each of these major topics. And then I know which ones to read the most first, because, these are the ones that are the most topically relevant to my work. And the ones that obviously perform best. So with social media sharing, for example, scheduling content and automating that part is not a bad thing to do, right? You shouldn't do that as your only thing. Like, you can't just put your entire social program on autopilot, but sharing valuable content is something that should be on autopilot. It used to take, when I worked at a PR firm, I would watch coordinators and account executives take 8, 12, 15 hours to put a client's social media stuff together, right? Copying and pasting from Google and stuff. I'm like, what a waste of time.
Yep.
This morning, I put together the Brain Trust Insights social feed, 150 posts, just loaded into Buffer and ready to go. To generate that feed took 2.5 seconds to type the command, spit the file out, and just load it in the system. There's a filtering mechanism in the software that says if the post contains these terms, nope, go straight out. So, there's a whole list of politicians' names. I don't want to see any of their stuff, or articles about them, porn and sex and all this stuff. Nope, don't want to share that either. And it's scored by the number of clicks in the social feed, because what I want to do is I want engagement on my social posts. So I get the posts that are shared the most and clicked on the most, and those go in the social feed because I want those to be the ones that people see, because they're just on existing evidence. They're the ones that are most likely to be shared. So if you want to build a highly engaged social following, share stuff that people are going to click on.
So I got to write that down. How to build a highly engaged social following.
I do the same thing in my email newsletter, generating my
That's what I was going to ask. Is that how you do your newsletter as well?
But I flip it around. Clicks get prioritized first, because what do I want? Higher click-through rate. I want people to click on the links in the newsletter.
Fascinating. All right. It is now time for our speed round. The point, I think you know this because you've done this before, is to answer the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I am ready.
What is your favorite blog?
My own.
Nice. Yours or Brain Trust?
My own, because it's where I get to do the testing for a lot of stuff. It is my guinea pig to try stuff up. And if it blows up, I'm like, oh, I didn't blow up the company website.
I didn't blow up the company website. Yay. Favorite podcast?
Marketing Over Coffee.
Of course. What book changed your life?
What book changed my life? Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander, which is an architecture book that has some of the most beautiful descriptions of how art works that you will ever read.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll have to check it out. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What was your last vacation?
Maine.
Last week. Right?
No. Last year.
Wasn't last week? Oh, last year. I thought it was last week.
No.
Favorite snack?
Does chewing gum count?
Sure. Which flavor?
Anything that doesn't contain sucralose, because I'm allergic to the chlorine in it. And if you didn't know that, sucralose is made by using chlorine and a couple of enzymes to change sugar into an isomer that's indigestible. However, you shouldn't really ingest lots of chlorine. It's bad for you.
Right. Yeah. We wouldn't want to do that anyway. But how would you discover that?
So I had a relative who worked at the company that invented sucralose and said, oh, this is the process. It's really bad for you.
But we're going to put it in chewing gum anyway.
We're going to put it in every product. It is in so many products now.
Wow. What's the best meal you've ever had?
I don't know. I mean, I've had plenty of good meals, but I can't really say there was a best one.
All right. You're going to have to think about that and let me know. What's your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure, shooting things. I do fast draw archery in my indoor range in my basement. And,
I was like, should I ask for more context around that, or should I just let it go?
And if you want to check on my Instagram profile, I got one of these little styrofoam heads, and you can see just a shot going right through the right eye of the head.
Awesome. I'm really pleased to know that. For writing, do you prefer pen and paper or laptop?
Laptop. I can't write.
Fair.
The skill has atrophied.
What's your latest binge?
Oh, so it is a binge. The 1990s sci-fi series Babylon 5 was off the air for 25 years and has just come back on Amazon Prime. And so going back and rewatching the highlight episodes of that series.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's next for you and Katie?
Making money, hiring clients, doing interesting work, not necessarily in that order.
You know, I have the advantage of being on your advisory board, so I can say this. I've never seen, and I have sat on several boards, I've never seen two people launch a business as fast and as successfully as the two of you. So Godspeed, good luck, and I'm rooting for you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.